causing people to call the police, and it is getting them to be fired. Apparently, they have a policy. So let's watch this clip, and then we'll read a little bit more.
Lemon and Peachtree corners for calling the police to report a robbery.
11 Alive's Teresa Bowles spent the day looking into what happened here. She spoke with both the women and Gwinnett County Police about what took place.
No. Seriously. Get out.
You're looking at the scary moments during a robbery in progress.
They swiped until they couldn't hold any more product and ran out the door.
And Rachel Rogers caught it all on camera at the Lululemon in Peachtree Corners.
We didn't really feel very protected or like know what else to do.
Rogers says it had been happening for months.
I was not working and someone like sent me a picture of the front entrance table and I was like, oh my gosh, like we just sold all the product, like good job. And they were like, no, like someone just came in and stole everything.
So she and a coworker called the police, but Jennifer Ferguson says the employee handbook and regional management told them they weren't supposed to do that.
You kind of clear a path for whatever they're going to do, and then after it's over, you scan a QR code.
Gwinnett police say there have been a few robberies in the area. According to the police report, the 3 men you see in the ski masks are now facing felony robbery charges, but the 2 workers say they were fired for calling the police.
They have a no tolerance policy.
They said because they have a zero tolerance policy.
I reached out to Lululemon corporate. No one got back to me. Rogers says she had been with the company for 5 years and was a key leader at the time. Ferguson says she was an assistant manager for 2.
That was my sole income. So I did have to like file for unemployment and use all of my savings to pay for like my car payment.
It put us in a bit of a bind. My husband is self-employed, so we're trying to figure out insurance. There was no severance.
As for now, Rogers said she had a job interview lined up after our interview, and Ferguson says she's still in between jobs and is in the process of sprucing up her resume. In Peachtree Corners, Teresa Bowles.
I like how they had to add that. She's sprucing up her resume. Now, Eric, my first question about this is this where Peachtree TV comes from? I think that, yeah, it must be Georgia. It says up in the upper right-hand corner. Mystery solved. Must be Peachtree TV's origin. We get that for some reason here in the Toronto area.
I've never heard of Peachtree TV. I don't know anything about that. But
well, you've never lived in Atlanta or Georgia, I don't think. So it makes sense why you wouldn't have it. For some reason, we used to get TBS here. Then it turns to Peachtree TV. I don't know why we get an Atlanta channel here.
Well, I think... I don't know any. I've never lived there, so yes, I never got the channel. But when you think of Peachtree, it's quite obviously. I mean, right, it's the peach state. It's Georgia.
Oh, sorry,
it's everybody.
Everybody knows it. What's the potato province in Canada, Eric?
Idaho.
Very good. The Canadian province of Idaho. So it's my understanding in this story that the reason why they have no zero tolerance policy on calling the police is because they don't like the publicity, and we can read. I could have misunderstood that, but if that's the case, it's pretty messed up because you don't want people to hear about it. Let's see what we can get into. The specific reasoning besides just saying they have a no tolerance policy wasn't very clear. Ferguson virtually said the same thing. They said I was terminated immediately with no severance because they have a zero tolerance policy, and they're not responding to the news. I did have to file for unemployment. There might be a different article that can maybe explain to this. I thought I read that they need to not call the police because it makes them look bad. Now, what would 3 young guys be doing with a bunch of Lululemon pants, Eric, besides wearing them in drag?
Yeah, no, I mean, probably just working out, right, would be my assumption. They would probably just hit the gym and, do some squats or something. Look, I don't know the reason for them, for whatever they claim is their reason for not calling the cops. And I could be 100% off base here, but I think it's pretty obvious that if a handful of white dudes did this very same thing, they wouldn't have a problem with the cops being called. Is that completely off base?
Well, no, because we've heard the excuse or the reasoning behind some of this stuff is that, a BLM sort of answer is because policing makes people afraid and over-policing and all this stuff, and you don't want to cause greater trouble somehow by calling the police. So that excuse has been used. Whether it's being used here is up in the air right now. But she did say, as we all share this tab now, the group had reportedly burglarized the store nearly a dozen times previously, and they're not supposed to call the cops for some reason.
Nearly a dozen times. Okay, hang on. I used
chill, bitch. Shut your.
Okay. Look, it's funny that they mention this has happened so many times because many years ago, when I was just a young, teenager, early 20s or something, I used to work in the mall in San Francisco, and they had what was called they had been dubbed, I guess, the Rainbow Girls. They used to wear these like bright rainbow belts and like rainbow beanies and scarves and stuff. They weren't trying to be discreet by any stretch of the imagination, and they would go into all the stores in the mall and they would be stealing for months on end to the point where they had a reputation. So it's just kind of funny to see this happen all over again, wherever in somewhere in Georgia. But why? It's gotten so blatant, right? Like nobody even cares anymore. Like back in the day, you used to like try to maybe steal something and nobody would know. Now it's just they realize that they can get away with anything. And this is also right in line with, I assume, I don't know for sure, but I assume that all these Lululemon stores have that very same pride flag, that ultra progressive pride flag that I was talking to you about before we started recording. And that is almost, while they think it's a sign of their virtue, right? It's their virtue signal. Like we are part of the cult. Come join us, which of course is becoming incredibly toxic in the last 6 to 8 weeks. But for them, what they think is signaling we are part of the establishment and we are one of you is now symbolizing that we won't stop you from coming in here and taking stuff, right? It used to mean, everybody's welcome, LGBT, two-spirit, bracket, black and brown, whatever. Now it basically means we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop any people of color from robbing us. And we will punish anybody who tries to stop a person of color from robbing us. So I don't know if their little virtue signaling flag is working out how it should.
Well, I know I'm pretty sure I read this on Post Millennial, and it was linked to a what's the place? You know what? I can find it. It's on my phone. It was linked to. People say we're unprepared. I have news for them. It's not that. I sent it to you, PJ Media. I accidentally copied the wrong link to myself, so I will get this to the audience in a moment's time. So many different platforms we have to move through here. I got to take it off my Instagram, send it to my Signal, copy it off the Signal on the desktop, move it in which way. Look at this guy. That's the thing. I don't know, like, don't they have any anti-theft? Like, if this is happening 5 times in a row, why is there no security? There's so many questions here. And if it's really this situation where it's like, we can't do this because, it makes us seem racist, well, then you're going to go out of business. And this is what keeps happening to businesses. Like, we see every single day, San Francisco, a new business closes because of the situations that are happening there regarding drug use and theft. And
yeah, there was another one. Did you heard about Old Navy?
I did hear that.
Yeah, so
here we have PJ Media.
And Old Navy, for the record, Old Navy, right, is a subsidiary of Gap, which actually started in San Francisco. And that's how
it was a big deal when we got an oldie at the mall here. So here it is. The no 911 call policy was initiated to protect the company, said Ferguson. We are not supposed to get in the way, kind of clear a path, blah, blah. We heard this, and that's that. We've been told not to put in any notes because that might scare other people. We're not supposed to call the police, not really supposed to talk about it. So they don't want to scare people in the store is basically what the excuse is here. So you don't want, Lululemon, you don't want people to think, oh, there's lots of robberies there's lots of crime there. So we don't want to tell people that we don't want to call the police and cause a scene that's going to be bad for business, which is pretty much like put yourself in harm's way and deal with it afterwards. This is a quote from I'm not sure who. Ferguson's James described the fallout his wife and Miss Rogers were subject to. This crew is in jail partly because of the courageous and brave actions of Jen and the other employee. This begins to boil. There are 2 exemplary employees, both leaders and looking to advance within the company. And what was their reward? They were immediately terminated without mention of severance or any financial consideration. I mean, I don't know the laws in Georgia, but usually you need to give a person severance if you fire them without cause. However, if they're fired with cause, then I'm not sure what you have to give them. I'm not an American employment lawyer. And I wasn't going crazy. This is what I read earlier. It comes that the regional manager for Lululemon openly questioned why they would call the police, stating that it would, quote, look bad for Lululemon to be the company calling the police. Are you guys says? These ladies are heroes of sorts. They did what we all hope we would do in a similar situation. I mean, calling the police doesn't make you a hero. I'm not going to adhere to that quote by the guy's girlfriend or the girlfriend's husband or whatever it is.
Something like that.
Guy friend, girlfriend. Retail businesses have apparently decided to accept the huge losses in merchandise taken by organized gangs who have woken up to the fact that no one really wants to arrest and prosecute them. Shoplifting or felony theft are victim crimes, we're told. We, the consumer, pay for these crimes through even higher costs for merchandise and shopping in an unsafe environment. Now, let's flesh this out a little bit. Let's say a company doesn't want to call the cops on anybody, in this case, to make them look bad. They keep getting stolen from. The prices keep going up. You would have to assume that if the prices keep going up, unless it's, one of these industries where people will pay anything, maybe fitness pants are one of them, but you'd have to assume that people might stop shopping there. And if people start shopping there and then they lower the prices and things are still getting sold, they're either going to move out of the area or they're going to hire security. It seems to me, Eric, that the move that these companies are doing now is say nothing, pretend like everything's wonderful in California and Atlanta in this case, or Peachtree, California, Georgia. It seems to me that the stores would rather not say anything and bite the bullet and say, everything's wonderful. We don't need to call the police. This neighborhood's wonderful. And then when it becomes too much, they just leave. So they just lie their way through because they don't want to be deemed offensive. And then they just leave. Is that the idea that you're getting from this? Or do you think there's something else?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like is happening, right? They walk on these eggshells because they would rather, apparently, to your point, they would rather shut down the entire business than risk getting called racist by somebody on Twitter, I guess. And obviously, we just saw this with Danielle Penny in New York. We saw something similar with the city bike woman in New York. So they are clearly going to villainize the victim of the crime, right? Because it's just easier for them. And I think to your point about things keep getting stolen and prices keep going up because of, the price of gas, inflation, and all that stuff, but also just to make up for the loss that these retailers are dealing with. And I find it funny that me personally, I can only think of one thing that in the past 5 years, the price has gone down. What could that possibly be? What are they flooding the streets with and the prices are rock bottom while everything else is going up?
I'm going to say weed.
It's weed. That's literally the only thing. Correct, right? So they put billboards, at least here in Arizona, they put billboards everywhere. Free weed, $5, $10, blah, blah. The prices are at rock bottom. But for everything else, gas, eggs, food all over the place. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And it also sort of, maybe this is apples to oranges, a little bit off topic too, but it also sort of aligns with this idea in New York that we're going to legalize weed for a handful of people that we know are going to pay the state, who are going to give their money to Kickback Kathy and Eric Adams. And anybody who doesn't will immediately be shut down. But we're also going to prioritize black people because we know how much black people love to smoke and sell weed. It's all completely ridiculous. And while this isn't a straight line, it's all a way towards the same conclusion, right? Every single thing they do is just a different way to gain complete control of the population. So turning the victim of the crime into the villain is par for the course. Obviously, I asked Danielle Penny, right? This man is going to face manslaughter charges while Jussie Smollett, who tried to incite a race war in the entire country, walks free because he's friends with Kamala Harris or whatever it is.
Turn it up, Jordan.